Then, said Aristor, there are but two choices, as Glorfindel already has declared, to hide the ring forever, or to unmake it, but both are beyond our power. Who will read this riddle for us? None here can do so, said Elrond gravely. At least none can foretell what will come to pass, if we take this road or that. But it seems to me now clear which is the road that we must take. The westward road seems easiest, therefore it must be shunned. It will be watched. Too often the elves have fled that way. Now at last we must take a hard road, a road unforeseen. There lies our hope, if hope it be, to walk into peril, to Mordor. We must send the ring to the fire. Or, as our seemingly trustworthy companion Boromir says in the film, one does not simply walk into Mordor. Its black gates are guarded by more than just orcs. There's evil there that does not sleep. The great eye is ever watchful. There's a barren wasteland, riddled with fire, ash, and dust. The very air you breathe is a poisonous fume. Not with 10,000 men could you do this. It is folly. But what if one could simply walk into Mordor? Because that is exactly what I intend to do. Before I get too far into all of the math, justification, and some of the real nitty-gritty lore upon this sort of intrepid endeavor I've set upon myself, let me first provide some background content to you guys, to sort of explain how I came up with this idea, so to speak. It first began in 2019, where a group of YouTubers known as the Yogscast, who I'll stop right there for a moment to first explain that. If you're interested, please do note that the Yogscast is a more adult theme-oriented YouTube and Twitch streaming group of people. Not to say that their stuff is very much raunchy, but there's a lot of very much adult language used in there to where it's much more for the older crowd, that 15 to 18 and above. So don't think that I'm necessarily saying stuff from a bunch of bad people, but just know that if you wish to go and search them out yourselves, be advised. But they decided in 2019 to start a new sort of streaming show, so to speak, called Fellowship of the Ring, in which these group of guys, being Tom Bates, Mark Humes, and Sam Gibbs, had the grand idea of what if we were to recreate the entire audio for Lord of the Rings, particularly the extended edition, aka the best version. Of course, it was a very grand endeavor of theirs that they then narrowed down to just the Fellowship of the Ring, the first movie. And it was a hilarious stream, to sort of hear them go about trying to remember the script and creating all the audio, so on and so forth. 2020 comes, particularly that of February and March, and the ever-present COVID-19 comes around, and therefore in-person streaming is no longer possible for them. So they then had to adapt to a new format, this being in the form of them deciding to go along the exact trek and journey that the Fellowship takes in Lord of the Rings by utilizing the Third Age Middle-earth mod pack for Minecraft, otherwise known as the World of Arda. Now, it was in these streams because I, like most people last year, was affected due to that, and I was not able to work, so I had a lot of free time to watch these streams. And as the weather was warming up in April, the idea occurred to me of, well, how far did they actually walk to Mordor? Everybody says one cannot simply walk into Mordor. What if you could? How far did they travel? Because it seems like a great distance. If you were to look at the map of Third Age Arda, yeah, that's quite a distance when you follow the line, but if you don't have a legend to tell you the scale, is it really that far? That was what I wished to find out, because to go along with one of my New Year's promises for 2020 to lose weight, I wondered, could this be a great thing to help me along? And thus ensued the research, the calculations, the math, and so on and so forth to today. So, mid-April 2020, I look into this infamous trek that the hobbits, the Fellowship, take from basically Hobbiton in the Shire all the way to the mouth of Mount Doom. While I don't have the exact sources with me since it's been almost a year since I did this research, it is generally accepted that the distance is about 1,779 miles, which is quite a distance. A lot of people like to round up 1780 to be nice. I'm using the exact number here. To provide context, for us Americans, imagine you were to draw a straight line from Los Angeles, California, all the way to Chicago, Illinois. That line would be 1,744 miles. This is a trek across basically 2/3 of the United States. That's a lot of distance. So, to give some context for the book and in their relation of how it went, it's stated that from when Frodo first takes off on his journey in Hobbiton to the point to where the Eagles come and save him and Sam at Mount Doom, that by the estimation of the Order calendar, the Third Age Order calendar, which is quite similar to ours, what I'm told, just different names for the months and same structure of days generally, it's a journey of about 180 days. Alright, pretty simple there. So, the math would then, of course, dictate that if you were to divide the two to get approximately how much they walked per day, which, of course, isn't an exact number. They obviously did less some days, more others possibly. It's not an exact representation, but we can get the idea of it being about 9.9 or 10 miles per day, which is quite a bit, actually. To put it in perspective, a healthy person, meaning us humans here in, our universe, Earth, we can go about 12 miles a day without much rest or stopping. Of course, much like with hobbits, they obviously would stop, rest, and, more importantly, eat. Granted, later on the journey, namely that of lumber's bread, but still, it implies that they wouldn't necessarily do it all at one time. This is normally as the healthy, minimal, maximum, normal that they could go. Which, for us, for 12 miles a day, would be about 148 days. So, obviously, a lot less. And, just a little side note here, for those of you who aren't familiar with Tolkienian lore, hobbits are also much shorter than normal humans, their max height getting to only about 4 feet. Which means it also takes them longer to go the same amount of distance, regardless of the fact that they also have very big feet. So, not exactly an easy journey for those guys, but it was never really meant to be, was it? Now is where we start to get into some ridiculousness here, because my harebrained idea for walking to Mordor, well, it was to do it in 157 days, which is obviously a lot less than what the hobbits did it in. Now, the reason being is because I wanted to start from a point and end on the day that Frodo started in the book. Very arbitrary date and very unnecessarily, but That was my original aspiration. Now, when you were to take that into account with our number for dividing, we basically get it out to 12 to 14 miles per day, or about 6 miles per day. A little asterisk there, so we'll come back to that number, because obviously it's a lot less. But 12 to 14 miles a day, which is normally what a healthy person can do. I, especially a year ago, was not necessarily healthy. 1, in eating habits, and 2, just in physique. I still would not consider myself exactly healthy, but I'm a lot better than what I was then. This being something to talk about later down the line in the video. Don't skip ahead though, because while the math may be boring, it is still fun, I promise you that. So, how was I going to go about doing this? Well, surprisingly enough, the town that I live in is surprisingly square, and through the help of an online source, I was able to map out a route that was about 6 miles long. Meaning, I would have to do it about twice a day. About twice a day, well, asterisk at the end there, to make up what I needed to. And then I would have to do it for the next 157 days. This also being me walking on average 1.5 miles a day. By that point, quarantine had started. I hadn't done a whole lot of leaving the house, and even before then, physical exercise wasn't exactly, grand. Let me also say for the fact that the fastest I had done this little 6-mile circuit was about 90 minutes or 1 hour and a half. So at a minimum of somewhere between 1.5 to 2 to 3 to 4 hours every single day for the next 157 days, I would have to just walk. Which, out of a normal day of being up somewhere between 12 and 16 hours, taking out a decent portion. And this is also figuring that next 157 days, I wasn't counting into the fact of my job opening back up. Theaters were one of the first things to close, but hopefully, with the way movies were coming out at the time, we would still possibly be able to open back up just through different restrictions, hopefully. And during that summer, we were able to. I never considered that into there. So, needless to say, I was pretty mad bonkers at this point of basically a lot of mileage at 2 to 4 hours a day for 157 days. And everybody could have said I was certifiable at that point. So, it's probably also no surprise to say, this never happened. Spoiler alert! So, when I decided to do this, it was about getting towards the end of April. Basically meaning that by end of September, I'd be accomplishing this goal. That didn't happen because I only really did about 5 of these circuits over the course of about 3 to 4 days before, 1, I realized, wow, my body really isn't capable of handling this. And 2, if you're familiar with Northwest Iowa here, and April, we had a week straight worth of rain. Which, well, yes, the Hobbits did it in their story and movie. Not exactly, gung-ho to be out there for possibly 2 hours soaking wet. So, I basically, at that point, went, alright, well, I can't do it now. That week passed, and I didn't pick it back up. Partially due to the fact of, 1, me realizing, A, how stupid this was, and how much time I'd possibly be losing. 2, the fact that there were talks about the governor of Iowa here opening theaters back up. 3, thankfully, in my opinion, a very gung-ho owner of our theater wanting to open back up and working with him on how we could do it, possibly getting people arranged and making sure we were able to do that, that I just never did it again. In fact, let me give you a couple even more humorous statistics about 2020. One being that during this endeavor, I also had the extremely foolish thought that I would read and record myself reading the books. That mainly being the first book, but given how far I got the first couple times, probably going to be doing the whole trilogy over this next 157 days. So that didn't happen, nor the fact that, one, to record it and edit that stuff and put backgrounds or something behind it as well to upload to help recount my journey, would be a lot of extra time that I'm now taking out every day or week. So there was that. Secondly, when I looked at all of the mileage that I had walked, or that my phone had recorded for 2020, I had only ended up walking 507 miles. Which out of 779, it's only about a third, quarter to a third. So that's what I just did naturally. And this is even with it picking up starting in September, when, one, our theater was officially open more, and two, basically trying to be more active and naturally being more active with having to be at work while we accompanied the school in our theaters to use it to help them social distance. Otherwise, that number probably would be a lot less, which, in all honesty, I'm not ashamed to admit, it's pretty embarrassing. So, that's why 2021, boom, smash cut, 2020, boom, boom, boom. New year, same goal, better math, bigger aspirations to do it. Let's get into it. So, my goal is now, I have a full year that I want to try and do it. It's 365 glorious days to try and accomplish this goal. That's a lot of time. That's already double what I wanted to do before. So, easy math. Divide those two out, we're going to get 4.9, or essentially 5 miles per day, or 2.4 miles per day. A little asterisk there, because we'll get to that in just a moment. Already, these numbers are a lot more doable than 6 or 14 miles a day. Alright, this is also, to put in some more perspective as well, if we were to take that divided by 12, how many months in a year, it would mean 148 miles a month. Which, compared to some other numbers, like 1,779, that number's sort of small. That sort of seems doable. You know, equate that down. Alright, you could sort of see yourself doing that. Also put into perspective, since September, I was doing on average, just naturally walking and going about my day, about 2 miles already. So, I'm already pretty much at that number. All I have to do is try a little harder, and congratulations. Not to mention, that was going into fall and winter, and now I'll have the last of winter, but mainly all of spring, summer, and early fall of better weather that is typically known for being walking in here in Iowa. That 2.4 does not seem that hard. Now, let me get to the big old asterisk and the question that you guys are probably wondering, or if you read the documentation on my blog, Chris, why is it I keep having these calculations? That I only have to walk once a day, or basically 2.5 instead of 5 miles a day. Well, here is why. So, to better illustrate this point, I will be using my map here of Third Age Middle Earth, because of the fact that if we were to take, for instance, Frodo, or same as a point of reference for this journey, who technically speaking, are the ones that walked all the way to the mouth of Mount Doom and started in the Shire, so they're our best frame of reference. They didn't actually technically walk all the way there. Point in case being, regardless if you've read the books or watched the movie, you know for a fact that there is this big freaking river here known as Andrin the Great River that they sail across. Now, it may not seem a whole lot, but when you look here, they start here in Lothlorien, the forest around Carlos Galadan, where they meet Galadriel and are given their gifts, and then take boats, and while they make stops around here, Andrin the Great River, they don't stop till they come to the Falls of Ralos, just past the Algranth, upon the hills of Amon-Hen and Amon-La, of which there is the great battle of Amon-Hen with the orcs, of which Frodo and Sam go across the way to Amon-La, and then they go on their journey. But as you can see, that is quite a distance compared to everything else they do. Also, for a small side note, here at Amon-Hen is where the first book and movie ends. And that's where the next two books go. Sure, the party's now divided into two versus just the one, but, you know, they cover a lot more distance in one book than they do in two. But needless to say, that's a lot of distance that they are not walking. So, thanks to the guidance of one of my sources, which I'll speak on here briefly, it's basically estimated that the distance from Carlos Galadan in Lothlorien all the way down to Amon-Hen is, give or take, somewhere around 450 to 500 miles. Now, that's already a good sizable chunk out of that number there. We're already split into about a third. Alright? Let's take a couple other things into consideration. We also know for the fact that, in regards to Frodo, there's also about 50 miles that he does not walk, because of the fact that after the Nazgul attack at Weathertop, there is several days where he is now riding on their pony, or Bill the donkey, in some regards, because he is now grievously injured and has no strength. And then the fact that Glorfindel then goes and finds them. Yes, in the book it's Glorfindel. Arwen is not the person in there. I don't even believe she's in the book. Clearly for the movie, and that sake. But he is then taken by Glorfindel, and is then taken the distance to Rivendell, which is this 50 miles. Sorry, my math was wrong. It is about 150 miles that Frodo does not walk from when they leave Weathertop to when Glorfindel finds them, and it is 50 miles that Glorfindel takes him over the ford of Brewing to Rivendell, and we have the big scene where the Nazgul cannot follow him because they do not like water. So, already, adding this up, we have, depending on who you consider, whether Frodo or Sam, who technically also walks the most because Sam even carries Frodo for most of the journey as well, once they're in Mordor. The infamous line being, "I can't carry it for you, Master Frodo, but I can carry you." And of course, so on and so forth. So already, we're at a distance of about 600 miles that the two people that we can use as reference for walking the most do not walk. That's a third of our distance. Now, as I mentioned, you could also argue that they also do not walk and are riding on horses when they meet Faramir, when they're in North Ilion, I believe, and he takes them to Henneth Anan, and in the book that's where they meet Smeagol. There's a vision, they send them on their way, It's a little hard to find out how far they actually travel though, because it's a distance of anywhere between like 10 to 15 miles, to us is about 30. And in the movie, I believe it's even more different in that they actually back travel from the way they came because they're taken by Faramir and then have to walk back. I could be wrong there. It's been many years since I've seen the movies. But already, that's a decent chunk of change out of our total miles. So why then is it that I am having the distance? Well, several reasons. One, it makes it easier, is nice to work with. Dividing them in half versus by thirds. It's not that much harder, but in my opinion, it's easy initial math. Secondly, I'm not going to simply just not walk this other half, because how do you measure that? It's not necessarily like, alright, well, anytime I'm not sleeping, technically I'm not walking, and therefore take that times however many days or hours and da-da-da-da-da. Therefore, hey, I've not walked a third of the way. It sort of feels like cheating, and I don't want to do that. This was also the reason why, previously last year, I divided the amount in half. That's because I was planning on biking that other distance. And that this would be my horse riding or my boat sailing, so to speak. Because then, I'm still getting something out of it, and because I'm still doing exercise, I don't feel so bad about basically not walking 20% of it. Basically, divide it in half, and this is a third. I'm already walking, if I'm biking half, there's still 50% left. Third of that distance would be 30, so there's that missing 20% that I would not be doing. So, biking, I don't feel quite as bad as doing it, as well as third reason being, is much in the way I can't calculate how much I'm not walking. By having these two calculations side by side with each other, if I end up walking more than half, then I can make up that other distance that I wouldn't be walking. That I can take away that biking distance. That I'm not necessarily going to stop once I've walked halfway. I can keep going. I'm not going to slow down or just stop walking for whenever that happens, you know. How do I not walk from like October to December? It doesn't really work that way. So by having the biking already there and having a number, I can subtract from that, and I will still have always done the necessary amount. Hopefully doing even more than that third number to more realistically have fully walked all the way to Mordor. This is my accurate calculations to doing it exactly how it was done in the book or movie. So, quick recap then. 1,779 miles. 365 days means 2.4 miles walking, 2.4 miles biking on average every single day till December 31st, 2021. Make sense? Good. Because now that I've provided all the background content, the original intent, and the math behind all of it, I can actually now bring you up to speed on what I've already done. I mean, it's March right now, so I've obviously done some already. So, as of March 7th, of when I'm pulling these numbers, I have already done 127 total miles. Which, yes, means I'm behind, because that's also just walking, no biking. But then again, has been winter here in Northwest Iowa. And while some days have been able to, other days I've not been able to bike, let alone even walk extra outside of my normal everyday life. So I'm a little bit behind, but spring is on its way in. I'm going to be able to make that up a lot easier now. And the fact that I'm not that far off from exactly where I need to walk every single day. Weekends have proven to be a bit different at work, so currently trying to figure out ways around that to make it up in other places. But I also still want to not only keep better track for myself instead of just an Excel spreadsheet, there's also this wonderful app that already exists for at least iOS and I believe Android too, called Walk to Mordor, that allows a person to enter in mileage data for whatever days and it will record that and tell you your percentage and progress along your journey. Even going so far as to provide realistic milestones for where you are along their journey. Like this weekend of March 12th to 14th, I will have officially made it to Bree in the book, which is after the Hobbits, Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin, making it after Buckleberry Ferry, their encounter with the Rise, making it to Bree, where they stay at the inn, where they meet the infamous Strider, and the mystique around him and everything. Which is really sort of cool, being able to not only have to just look at plain numbers, having a realistic visual representation of how far I've gone to be like, okay, I know where I'm at. That's sort of cool. And it helps me bring more and better context to me detailing my progress as well to all of you watching, reading out there, and keeping along with me, because now I'm providing more context to you versus, oh, I'm 10% of the way there, 2.5 months in. Sure, you can sort of see that, but for especially people who are knowledgeable of either the trilogy of movies or the books, providing more context is like, okay, I understand where he's at, where he's going, what realistically happened, and I think just makes it more personal and fun as well. So I'm really happy for that. So I hope to be posting major milestones like that to you guys versus just, oh, 3 days after Weathertop. Woo! That doesn't really mean anything. Whereas if I were to say, hey, I finally made it to Rivendell, everybody's going, all right, I can see along a map or just my general understanding how far he's gone, where he still has to go, and what sort of happens. I also thought it would be fun, and on Walmart I found a decent price for this wonderful tungsten blue one ring to wear around my journey. One, I've really been missing wearing something on my left hand. I used to for a long time, and then the ring I had broke, got another one, and far too big. I really wish companies could be wholly and fully consistent with their ring sizes. And I also like it as it's a constant reminder to myself. It's a physical thing to look at and be like, yep, I need to make sure I'm walking. I need to make sure I'm taking this journey seriously. I'm not straying from it. I am trying my best to accomplish it. So I am glad that I have this. It's really nice and fun. Yeah, it sort of cements that promise and in the terms of Frodo, the burden that is now placed upon him to accomplish. So, yeah, that's sort of my full explanation of and math behind my walk to Mordor sub-goal for losing weight for 2021. I know I'd mentioned it probably multiple times last year to people, and yeah, I've sort of been trying to make a big deal about it this year. But I wanted to make a video, one, to hopefully make it easy to understand if the writing on my blog wasn't, and probably not quicker to read or watch. Wanted to do it nonetheless, as some people I know are more audio learners versus visual learners, though I hope my visuals weren't too terrible regardless. But yeah, I think it's probably best to end this with how Elrond ends the chapter, or ends the leaving of the company or fellowship when they leave the Shire, to sort of best cement the intent and meaning of what it is I'm trying to do. This is my last word, he said, meaning Elrond, said in a low voice. The ring-bearer is setting out on the crest of Mount Doom. On him alone is any charge laid, neither to cast away the ring, nor to deliver it to any servant of the enemy, nor indeed let any handle it, save members of the company and the council, and only them in gravest need. The others go with him as free companions, to help him on his way. You may tarry or come back, or turn aside in other paths, as chance allows. The further you go, the less easy will it be to withdraw. Yet no oath or bond is laid on you to go further than you will. for ye do not yet know the strength of your hearts, cannot foresee what each may meet upon the road. Faithless is he that says farewell when the road darkens, said Gimli. Maybe, said Elrond, but let him not vow to walk in the dark, who has not yet seen the nightfall. Yet sworn word may strengthen quaking heart, said Gimli. Or break it, said Elrond. Look not too far ahead, but go now with great hearts. Farewell, and may the blessing of elves and men and all free folk go with you. May the stars shine upon your faces. Good luck, cried Bilbo, stuttering with the cold. I don't suppose you'll be able to keep a diary, Frodo, my lad, but I shall expect a full account when you get back. And don't be too long. Farewell.